You finally did it. You signed the mountain of paperwork, your hand cramped up, you handed over a check that made your bank account weep, and you got the keys. You bought the house. For about 48 hours, you feel like a legend. You're living the American dream. But then, the dust settles. You're lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling shadow that looks suspiciously like a dollar sign, and the reality hits you like a wet towel. You owe the bank $500,000, and you have to pay them every single month until you are literally old and gray. It's a heavy feeling, but then something good happens. Maybe you get a promotion at work. Maybe your side hustle finally takes off. Or maybe you just stopped buying $7 lattes every morning. Whatever the reason, you find yourself with an extra $1,000 a month in your budget. Now you have a new problem. A good problem, but a stressful one. I'm Max. On this channel, we strip away the guru hype to give you the raw financial mechanics that actually build wealth, so you can stop stressing about money and start controlling it. Do you take that $1,000 and attack the mortgage to get the bank off your back? Or do you take that $1,000, throw it into the stock market, and try to become a millionaire? If you go to a dinner party or browse Reddit, you'll get two very loud, very different opinions. Voice A says, "Don't be an idiot. Interest rates are 7%. Pay off the debt. Guaranteed return." Voice B says, "Don't be a coward. The S&P 500 averages 10%. You're losing money by paying off cheap debt. Leverage is your friend." And you're stuck in the middle, paralyzed. Let's pause for a second. Do you remember the marshmallow test? It was that psychological experiment where they put a kid in a room with one marshmallow. If the kid could wait 15 minutes without eating it, they got 2 marshmallows. Personal finance is basically the adult version of that, but the marshmallows are your freedom, and the room is on fire. Most people think this decision is just math. They pull out a spreadsheet, type in 7% versus 10%, and declare a winner. But I'm going to show you why that calculation is actually a trap. There is a mathematical blind spot that 90% of new homeowners fall into, and it looks like a winning lottery ticket until you read the fine print. To see it, we need a realistic scenario. No abstract theories here. Let's say you just bought a home. Loan, $500,000. Rate, 7%, which is the painful reality for most buyers in 2024 and 2000. Term, 30 years. Your monthly principal and interest payment is roughly $3,327. That doesn't even include taxes or insurance. That's just the rent you pay to the bank to keep the house. Now, you have that golden ticket, the extra $1,000 a month. If you just listen to the math guys on the internet, the answer is obvious. You invest. Obviously. Because 10 is bigger than 7. It's first grade math. But if it's that simple, why do so many wealthy people obsess over paying off their homes? Are they bad at math, or do they know something the spreadsheet doesn't show? If you've ever stared at your bank account and felt that specific mix of pride and panic, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps the algorithm find other people who are awake at 3 a.m. worrying about interest rates. We are going to run the numbers on both scenarios, the millionaire investor and the debt destroyer. But I have to warn you, the first result I show you is going to look like a no-brainer. It's going to make you want to dump every penny into the stock market immediately. But hold on to your wallet, because that first number relies on a lie we tell ourselves about the future. Let's put on our Wall Street suits for a minute. If you talk to a financial optimizer, you know, the guy at the BBQ who won't shut up about his crypto wallet or his dividend yield strategy, he will look you in the eye and tell you that paying off a mortgage early is mathematically stupid. And if you look at his spreadsheet, he's kind of right. This is scenario A, the investor. You decide to keep the mortgage. You make the minimum payment to the bank. And you take that extra $1,000 golden ticket and funnel it straight into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. You set it on autopay and you forget about it. Let's be somewhat conservative. The market historically does about 10%, but let's say 9% to account for fees and the fact that the economy occasionally lights itself on fire. We'll also assume that as you get older and earn more, you bump up that contribution slightly every year to keep up with inflation. Now, I want you to step into my time machine. It is now the year 2055. You are retired. You have gray hair, maybe a robot dog, and hopefully, hoverboards are finally real. You open your brokerage account app, which is probably a hologram by then, and you look at the balance. By simply ignoring your mortgage and investing that $1,000 a month for 29 years, your account balance sits at approximately 1.8 million. That is a massive number. That's pay for your grandkids' college money. That's winter in Florida money. The logic here is called arbitrage. You are borrowing money from the bank at 7%, your mortgage, to earn 9% or 10% in the market. As long as your investment return is higher than your debt interest rate, you are winning the spread. It's exactly how banks make money. And now, you're playing the game like a bank. If you stop the video right here, the decision is easy. Why would you ever throw money into a hole, the mortgage, to save 7% when you could throw it into a rocket ship, the market, and make 9%? You'd be leaving nearly $2 million on the table. This is usually the moment where the math guys drop the mic and walk away. They point to the $1.8 million and say, case closed. But wait a second. Take a closer look at that time machine vision. While you were staring at your $1.8 million investment account, did you notice what was happening in the background for those last 29 years? You were writing a check every single month. For 3 decades, while you were building that wealth, you were also bleeding cash. You carried a $500,000 anchor around your neck through job changes, recessions, pandemics, and midlife crises. The spreadsheet assumes you are a robot. It assumes you never panicked when the market crashed. It assumes you never needed that cash for a medical emergency. And most importantly, it hides a dirty little secret about how your mortgage actually works. Because while you were focused on the 9% you were earning, you probably didn't notice the absolute fortune the bank was silently stealing from you in the first few years of your loan. There is a reason banks have the biggest buildings in every city. And it's not because they are generous. It's because of a little financial weapon called amortization. And if you don't understand it, that $1.8 million projection is practically worthless. We need to turn on the lights and look at the invisible shredder that is eating your money right now. Okay, shake off the daydream of being a multimillionaire in 2055 for a second. We need to look at the invisible leak in your financial boat. Most people treat a mortgage like a car loan or a student loan. You think, I borrowed $500,000, so every month I pay back a little piece of that $500,000. Wrong. I want you to burn into your brain the banker's bonus. Imagine you walk into your bank branch with your monthly check for $3,227. You hand it to the teller, smiling, feeling responsible. She smiles back, takes the check, and walks over to a heavy-duty industrial shredder. She tears off a tiny corner of the check, about the size of a postage stamp, and puts it in the safe. That's your principal. Then, she takes the rest of the check, nearly $3,000 of it, and feeds it directly into the shredder. Burst. Gone. That is literally what happens during the first year of a 30-year mortgage. Let's look at the hard numbers on that $500,000 loan at 7%. In month 1, your payment is $3,027. Amount going to interest, $2,907. Amount paying off the house, $410. You are paying 88% interest. You are basically renting the money from the bank. And because the loan balance is so high, the rent is astronomical. It takes nearly 20 years before you are paying more principal than interest. This is amortization. It's the bank's favorite magic trick. They front-load the interest so that if you move in 7 or 10 years, which most Americans do, you've paid them a fortune in profit but barely made a dent in the loan. Now, let's look at scenario B, the debt destroyer. This is where you take that extra $1,000 golden ticket and apply it directly to the principal every month. Here is the superpower of prepaying. That extra $1,000 skips the shredder. It goes 100% into the safe. It attacks the loan balance directly. And because the balance drops faster, the interest charged next month is lower. It creates a domino effect. If you add $1,000 a month to a $500,000 loan at 7%, you don't pay it off in 30 years. You pay it off in roughly 16 years. You delete 14 years of payments. And the interest savings? You save over $380,000. That is $380,000 of after-tax money you don't have to give to the bank. But here is the real argument for prepaying, and it's the one the math guys usually ignore. It's the guaranteed return. When you invest in the stock market, you are hoping for 9% or 10%, but you might get 20%. You might get a lost decade where the market goes sideways for 10 years. It's a gamble. When you pay off a 7% debt, you are getting a guaranteed, risk-free 7% return. Do you know how hard it is to find a guaranteed 7% return? High-yield savings accounts pay maybe 4% or 5%, and you have to pay taxes on that interest. U.S. Treasury bonds pay around 4.5%. The bank is offering you a guaranteed 7% return, tax-free, just for paying them back early. In the investment world, a guaranteed 7% is the holy grail. Warren Buffett would probably take that deal in a heartbeat. So, scenario B looks pretty good now. You're debt-free in 16 years, you saved a fortune, and you took zero risk. But, and in personal finance, there is always a but. There is a massive, dangerous flaw in the pay off the mortgage strategy. It's a flaw that has left people house rich and cash poor, eating ramen noodles in $1 million home because they couldn't access their money when they needed it most. We need to talk about the danger of burying your money in drywall. Let's say you listen to the debt destroyer logic. You poured every spare dime into your mortgage. You are 5 years in, and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in home equity. You are crushing it. Then life happens. Maybe your industry collapses. AI took your job. Maybe you have a medical emergency. Maybe your roof decides to cave in. You need $30,000 cash fast. You look at your house. You have tons of wealth stored in those walls. But here is the problem. You can't eat drywall. This brings us to the liquidity paradox. Home equity is trapped wealth. The only way to get it out is to sell the house, which costs money and leaves you homeless, or ask the bank for a loan, HELOC. But guess what? If you just lost your job, the bank isn't going to give you a loan. They only lend money to people who don't need it. So you are sitting in a paid-off house with zero cash in the bank, watching your credit score tank because you can't pay the electric bill. This is where scenario A, investing, comes screaming back into the lead. Stocks are liquid. If you invested that $1,000 a month into an index fund for 5 years, you'd have a pile of cash, probably $70,000 or $80,000 that you can access by clicking sell on your phone. That is survival money. That is freedom. But wait, before you switch teams again, we have to look at the dark side of investing. Remember that $1.8 million calculation earlier? The one that assumed a steady 9% return? That relies on average returns. But averages are misleading. If you put your head in the freezer and your feet in the oven, on average, you're comfortable. In reality, you're dead. We need to talk about the lost decade. Most young investors today have only seen the market go up. But let's look at a data point that terrifies seasoned investors. Source: Macro Trends, Lauer, Slick Charts, S&P 500 data. The insight: if you invested in the S&P 500 in January 2000 and you held it until January 2010, your total return was roughly negative 9%. Adjusted for inflation, it was even worse. 10 years. Zero growth. Actually, negative growth. If you had chosen the invest strategy during that decade, you would have carried a mortgage for 10 years and lost money in the market. You would have lost twice. This is called sequence of returns risk. It doesn't matter if the market averages 10% over 100 years if it crashes right when you need the money. So, here is the dilemma. The mortgage payoff. Guaranteed 7% return, but your money is trapped in the walls. High liquidity risk. The investment. High potential return and high liquidity, but the market might flatline for a decade. High market risk. If you are freelance Fiona, your income is volatile. You might have a great month, then 3 months of zero income. For you, locking money in a mortgage is dangerous. You need liquidity. You need the cash pile. If you are tenured Tom, working a government job with a pension and zero chance of getting fired, you don't need the liquidity as much. You can afford to lock money away for the guaranteed 7% return. So, who is right? The investor or the debt destroyer? Neither, because they are both trying to solve a complex emotional problem with a simple math hammer. The real solution isn't all in or all out. It's about finding the sleep well at night ratio. And for that, we need a new rule. We have arrived at a stalemate. On one side, the debt destroyer gives you a guaranteed 7% return but traps your money in a concrete box. On the other side, the investor gives you liquid cash and potential millions, but exposes you to the risk of a lost decade where your money goes nowhere. So, who wins? This brings us to the F2 rule. F2 stands for flexibility plus freedom. And unlike the binary A versus B arguments you see on Twitter, this rule acknowledges that life is messy. It's not about choosing the perfect math. It's about hedging your bets so you can survive anything. I used to visualize this. The 4% line in the sand. Picture a thermometer of interest rates. Below 4%, the free money zone. If you are one of the lucky Americans who locked in a 2.5% or 3% mortgage back in 2020 or 2021, stop. Do not pay that off early. Inflation is literally higher than your interest rate. The bank is paying you to borrow that money. Take your extra cash and invest it. You have the golden handcuffs. Wear them proudly. Above 8%, the danger zone. If you have debt over 8%, credit cards, personal loans, or a really unfortunate high-rate mortgage, that is a hair-on-fire emergency. The stock market is unlikely to consistently beat 8% or 10% after taxes. Pay this off immediately. The messy middle, 4% to 7%. This is where most of us live today. The math is foggy. 7% guaranteed mortgage versus 9% potential stocks is too close to call. So what do you do in the messy middle? You split. The F2 framework suggests a 50-50 split. You take that extra $1,000. You send $500 to the mortgage principal, and you send $500 to your index fund. Why? Because it makes you fragile-proof. If the stock market crashes tomorrow, you don't panic because you've been aggressively paying down your debt and building equity. If the stock market rips upward for 10 years, you don't feel FOMO, fear of missing out, because you've been investing $500 a month and catching that wave. You are never 100% right, but you are never 100% wrong. Now, remember Freelance Fiona and Tenured Tom from earlier? You can tweak the split based on your life. Fiona, the risk taker. Her income is shaky. She needs flexibility, cash. She might do a 70-30 split, 70% into investments for liquidity, 30% to the mortgage. Tom, the safe bet. His job is secure. He wants freedom, no debt. He flips it. 30% investing, 70% mortgage. By doing this, you are designing a financial life that fits your stress tolerance, not a spreadsheet's. And if this middle path approach makes sense to you, if you're tired of people screaming that there is only one right way, hit that subscribe button. We talk about the nuance of money here, not just the hype. But even after all this math, there is one final variable we haven't accounted for. It's a variable that doesn't show up on any calculator, but it's actually the most important number of all. We need to calculate your ROA, return on anxiety. Here is the hard truth that Wall Street doesn't want you to know. Spreadsheets don't have feelings. They don't have anxiety. They don't wake up in a cold sweat wondering if they'll lose their job. But you do. That brings us to the final and most important metric of this entire video, ROA, return on anxiety. We spend our whole lives obsessed with ROI, return on investment. We want to know if we are getting 7% or 10%. But we rarely ask, what is the return on my peace of mind? If having a $500,000 mortgage makes you feel trapped, if it stops you from taking a career risk, or makes you stress eat, or keeps you up at 3 a.m., then the cost of that debt is way higher than 7% interest. The cost is your quality of life. In that case, paying off the mortgage has a massive ROA. You are buying your freedom back from the bank. You are buying the ability to look at your boss and say, I quit, without fearing homelessness. You can't put a price tag on that. On the flip side, if having zero cash in the bank makes you anxious, if you feel exposed and vulnerable without a safety net, then investing has the high ROA. You are buying security. To drive this home, let's do one last thought experiment. I call it the obituary test. Imagine looking at a tombstone. It says, "Here lies Dave." He optimized his portfolio perfectly and achieved a 9.4% annualized return over 40 years. Nobody cares. Not your kids, not your friends, and definitely not you when you're gone. Financial freedom isn't a number on a screen. It isn't hitting $1.8 million or $5 million. Financial freedom is the ability to design your life the way you want, without money being the thing that stops you. For some of you, that means killing the debt so you can live simply and work less. For others, it means piling up investments so you can travel the world. The F2 rule isn't a rigid mathematical formula. It's permission. Permission to say, I know the math says invest, but I'm going to pay off my house because I want to sleep better. Or permission to say, I know debt is scary, but I'm going to invest because I want liquidity. So before you open your banking app, close your eyes. Ask yourself, what scares me more, the debt or being broke? Once you answer that, you don't need a guru. You just need to execute. I want to know where you stand on this. Are you team debt destroyer? Team investor? Or are you going to use the 50-50 split? Drop your strategy in the comments. I read every single one because honestly, I'm still figuring out what to do with my own extra cash this month. Thanks for watching and go get some sleep.